Now, sudo won't work. So basically, trying to be the root user and execute commands as the Lasso user is not going to work, because it will basically ask you for a password, and you can't type in a password because Lasso is basically not logged in, so there's nothing you can do there. This will also have effects if you're trying to run scripts that, for example, need a password to log into a remote server, such as Subversion over SSH, or if you're running rsync or something where you need passwords, so that will have to be stored somehow. Usually the way to do that is by providing a shared key between your own machine and the machine that you're trying to access. That's slightly beyond the scope of this talk, though on how to set it up, and I've had plenty of trouble doing that myself. So there's probably other people that are better versed at explaining that one. So that's how that works. Now, first thing we're going to talk about is OS process itself, which of course is built into Lasso. Now, the first thing to say is that it doesn't actually install itself out of the box because, again, of the security implications. So if you're installing Lasso, it won't install OS process by itself. What you have to do, you have to do it manually, and you have to basically look at all the folders that are installed by Lasso and look for the extensions folder, which doesn't actually do anything, it just puts things in there, and that's where you'll find the OS process module. And you have to take it from there and move it into the Lasso modules folder, and then restart Lasso. And now, lo and behold, it's become available to Lasso. But you also have to add a user to the OS process users group, which again, there's another step you have to go into Lasso admin and add a user to create a group, which Lasso does. No, sorry, the group is already created by Lasso. You have to basically add a user so that you can actually issue commands and provide a username and password. I hope that makes sense. And now the first thing, of course, is OS process is a bit tricky to use. It's not exactly user-friendly when you look at the examples as well. In the mind, it's like, well, it has like arrays that you have to feed to it, and it has to read and open and close. But that's the way it works. So basically, a very simple example would be to specify a local variable, to specify the path to a folder where you want to do something with the command. So for example, the web server folder. Then there's your command. So basically, you're setting a variable, which is called OS in this case. You feed that the command saying OS process, and then you get your argument. Your arguments that go with that. So OS process, in this case, I'm calling the ls script, which is going to list a list of files in the folder. And you specify the path there, and then you have an array. This all your arguments go into. So in this case, I'm typing the hyphen and a and l for listing a file, list of files with all the details to go with it. And then the other argument is the actual path. So what I'm doing here is I'm putting the response path. So I guess library, web server, documents, and then wherever my script happens to be living or where my page is being called from. And the next thing then is to say, okay, I'm going to set a variable that I'm going to put that information into. So I create a variable called script output, and then my variable, all this blurb here that I've declared there, I'm going to read. So that actually runs the OS process command. That's like as if you were typing that whole thing in terminal code. ls space hyphen al space, and then the path to the folder that you want to list. When you run that, basically you close, then that's the next stage is to close that process, and then declare, or you can call your variable to see what came out. So if you then basically put that on your HTML page, what comes out is that. Okay, so that's basically what you would see in the terminal as well, because you get all that information out. So that's the most simple way of running a command line command. Now, there's other ways of doing it. There's pass-through, which has been around for much longer than OS process, and was created, precedes OS process, and was developed by Stefan Klein, who is not here. So I have to sing his praise in his absence. It's donationware, so it's not free. If you'd like to get some money for it, I would recommend people do that if they do download it, because it's a very useful piece of software. It's very easy to install, and it's very easy to use. Basically, all you have to do is you download the what's called .dilib or whatever it's called, OS process, or pass-through. You put that into the Lasso modules folder, and you restart it. So that's all you have to do. So it's out of the box, basically. Very simple example is you just basically tell it, you call pass-through, and you give it a command, in this case, and that's it. Simple as that. So that does exactly the same thing, and it's much easier to use, as you will agree. Now, another trick is what I sort of have been using myself, is include URL. I've seen questions on the list, for example, can you have a page that has both PHP and Lasso on the one page? Well, of course you can't really, because you know, it's only one process can process the page at one time. You can sort it if you use include URL. Don't use include null, but include URL, which basically allows you to specify another page on another server or on your own server, whatever the case may be. And it works like this. For example, I create a page and I say Lasso says today is, and then I put in a Lasso tag called serve date, and voila. Okay, that's my bit of Lasso code. Then I'm going to declare a variable, a local variable, say right, called from PHP, and I'm going to include a URL. Now this is all in the code example that I've given as well. So you give the full name, including the HTTP specification, because you're including a URL, obviously. And then you call a page which I've called info.php, which is page written in PHP. And then you call that page by saying PHP says today is, and then you basically include your local declared earlier, which is taking the code from the PHP page and processing it. And then the PHP page looks like that. Okay? Just the same thing, it just gives us the date in PHP format. So that's how, so there are two different pages. One is, that's the contents of the info.php file, and that's the content of the Lasso page. And then together, we end up with that. Okay? It works, in other words. Now obviously, you might want to do a bit more than that, and keep in mind that, for example, the PHP page won't share the session variables or anything like that you have on yours. You have to feed all those parameters to whatever script it is you're calling. So you would do that obviously by, for example, having an include URL, specifying the actual page, you bring in a question mark, and feed the parameters with the Lasso variables, and that allows you to let PHP or whatever, KDB, Perl or whatever, to process a page and do things with it. I have used that when, for example, I was not in a position to do some code myself, but I got somebody else to do it for me, but he was writing it in Perl. It's been a problem, and of course you could then start translating everything from Perl back into Lasso. I didn't have time to do that, so instead I just put the whole script onto the server and use include URL to include the script, feed it the parameters that Lasso had already created, and voila, it works. I think I'm actually still using it. Well, translated sometime. Now, there's another option. It's called the shell tag. The shell tag is a way to simplify OS process, so you don't have to use a third-party module like pass-through, because people will feel, well, I can use that, it's all very well to use pass-through, but what if something happens to Stefan, you know, Lover supports it, it's something I have to pay for. So basically you can use the OS process and then use the shell tag to simplify it. It's developed by Jason Hook, who is also not here, so again I have to see his praises in his absence. You download it from TagSwap. TagSwap.net is a very useful website where you've got all sorts of very handy bits of code and tags, obviously. It requires another tag that Jason has developed called response local folder. Again, you can download it at the same time. It's referenced on the site. You basically take both of those tags and install them into the Lasso started folder, and you restart Lasso. What happens then is you basically run shell, which is the command, and you feed it the parameters off the command line. And where did you get before? It's exactly like pass-through, just use shell instead of pass-through. So it's a very simple command. Now, obviously, you're not always going to want to just run one command and that's it. You may want to obviously start doing several things at the same time. One thing to keep in mind is that when you run a command like shell or OS process or pass-through, it's like opening a terminal window and typing that command. And the next time you call that, it's like opening another terminal window and opening another command. So basically, if you try and do this, say for example shell, and then you cd into a directory, and then the next command is like list all the files in that directory, you're not going to be listing the files in that directory, because basically it's closed the connection and opened another one. This time it will list the files in the default directory that Lasso is using, which in this case is the Lasso professional applications folder. You get to see that regardless of what you CD into first. So if you want to do something like that, you'd have to read up in the manual on how to do shell scripting and, for example, string the whole lot together. For example, you could say, I'm going to list the folder and I'm going to basically specify the whole path. And that's one way of doing that. Or I'm going to CD into that directory, semicolon, and then list all the files. Which basically, you're running two commands separated with a semicolon. Just keep in mind that this is one string, obviously, just feed the whole string to the shell command. So this little semicolon here is not the end of the Lasso command, it's the end of the shell command. This is the end of the Lasso command, okay?